The alert hit my phone at 6:14 a.m. I hadn't even gotten out of bed yet. Unusual activity detected on your account. I blinked at the screen, half asleep, expecting it to be some glitch, maybe a $15 subscription I'd forgotten to cancel. But when I opened the banking app, everything inside me went cold. My savings account, the one I'd been building for 7 years, gone. The balance read $31.87. 7 years of sacrifice, canceled morning coffees, skipped vacations, side gigs on weekends vanished overnight. At first, I thought it was fraud. A hacker. Someone halfway across the world buying crypto or sneakers. But then I saw the name on the transaction. Transferred to Brielle Whitman. My sister. My own blood. I sat up in bed, phone trembling in my hands, trying to breathe. I scrolled again to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The transaction wasn't pending. It had cleared. $45,810. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only stare at the name I knew better than my own, burned into the confirmation screen like a brand. How? 3 days earlier, Brielle had called while I was at work. Her voice had been rushed sweet. "Hey sis, Grandma sent an engagement gift to the wrong account. Can I forward you the details? I just need to verify a code real quick." I'd been busy. I didn't even ask questions. Just texted her the authentication code like she asked, trusting her without hesitation. And now, it wasn't just about the money. It was about what it represented. That money was my escape hatch, my one-way ticket to independence. After years of being the invisible child in a family that orbited around Brielle's whims, that account was the only thing that belonged to me. I had spent my 20s working 2 jobs, full-time at a communications firm and part-time freelance editing just to stay ahead. While Brielle bounced between relationships and failed business ideas, I saved. I planned. I built a safety net no one could touch. Until she did. Growing up in Charleston, I was always the quiet one. Brielle was the golden child, beautiful, dramatic, endlessly adored. Even as kids, I knew my place. In school pictures, she stood center stage in floral dresses and perfect bows. I was the one behind her, holding her coat, wearing last season's hand-me-downs. If she cried, everything stopped. If I cried, I was told to stop making things harder. When I brought home straight A's, my father nodded and asked if I could help Brielle with her essays. When she barely graduated, they threw her a surprise party. Still, I kept trying, hoping that if I just worked harder, stayed quieter, they'd see me too. But they never did. Everything went to Brielle. The bigger bedroom, the newer car, the tuition to a private college she never finished. I went to a state school on scholarship, worked nights, and graduated with 0 debt. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Now, at 30, I was finally within reach of buying a small condo in North Charleston. It wasn't much, but it would have been mine. My walls, my keys, my freedom. And she took that from me. I didn't cry. Not then. I got up, showered like a robot, and went through the motions. But my mind burned with one question. Why would she do this? And somewhere underneath the grief, a second question emerged, darker, sharper. What would I do about it? Because Brielle thought I would stay silent. She always had. She thought I would cover for her again and again. But this time she made one mistake. She forgot I knew something she didn't think I'd ever use. A secret about Damien Langford. Her perfect fiancé, her ticket to a fairy tale wedding. And if she didn't give me back what she stole, I was finally ready to burn the fairy tale down. 3 days before Christmas, Brielle arrived at our parents' house like a scene from a holiday commercial. Coat swinging off her shoulder, red lipstick immaculate, heels clicking confidently on the hardwood floor. And trailing behind her, with the kind of practice charm that made everyone's voice lift half an octave, was Damien Langford. Tall, tailored, every inch of him screamed success. His navy wool coat probably cost more than my monthly rent. His smile was straight from a billboard. White, symmetrical, just shy of believable. "This is Damien," Brielle announced, spinning her engagement ring like a debutante in a pageant. My fiancé. My mother gasped audibly, hands flying to her chest. My father stood and shook Damien's hand like he'd just been introduced to royalty. Me, I just nodded, because I had seen men like Damien before. Smooth hands, smooth talk, and always, always, eyes that scanned a room like a stock report. And he was doing it now, right in front of everyone, smiling politely at Brielle while his gaze darted quickly over our family's modest decorations. The worn armchair, the chipped serving dishes. Assessing, calculating. Leah, he said, turning to me, Brielle's told me so much about you. Only the good parts, I hope, I said lightly. He laughed. It didn't reach his eyes. Over dinner, Damien charmed everyone. He talked about his real estate development firm downtown, the penthouse he was remodeling, his newest project along the Battery. My father nodded with admiration. My mother blushed when he complimented her cooking. Brielle was glowing beside him, touching his arm as she told stories that revolved entirely around herself. I sipped my wine and watched them both, wondering what exactly he saw in her, or more precisely what he was after. The thing about Brielle is she's magnetic. Always has been. People want to believe her version of reality because it's more entertaining, more dramatic, shinier than the truth. And Damien, for all his polish, seemed to be under that same spell. But something about him bothered me. The way he touched his phone every few minutes, even when she wasn't looking. The way he looked at the engagement ring, not with affection but appraisal. Later that night, I was in the kitchen rinsing dishes while my mother gushed about how lucky Brielle was to find a man like Damien. That's when I heard the voice behind the wall. I said, I'll handle it, baby. She doesn't suspect anything. Just give me a few more weeks. His voice was low, tight, smooth but not for our ears. I froze. The faucet kept running as I strained to hear more. Footsteps. Then nothing. When I returned to the living room, Damien had his arm wrapped around Brielle's shoulders like nothing had happened. She leaned into him, laughing at something my father said about wedding venues. I sat down slowly, every instinct in me screaming that something wasn't right. But what could I say? That I heard him whispering baby to someone who wasn't my sister? That the man she just introduced to our family as her future husband might be juggling other futures somewhere else? I stayed quiet, like always, told myself I was overthinking, told myself I didn't want to ruin Christmas. Over the next few days, Brielle kept sending me Pinterest boards and floral mood boards, demanding my opinion like I was her wedding planner, not the sister she'd barely spoken to in months. Damien never came up again, but his voice did. That sentence, that tone, it haunted me in the quiet. Then came the Tuesday morning, 1 week later, when I woke up to find my savings gone and her name on the transaction. That's when it clicked. Damien wasn't just charming. He was expensive. And Brielle, for all her designer handbags and brunches she couldn't afford, had finally run out of magic tricks. She didn't just want a dream wedding. She wanted to buy her place in Damien's world. And she did it with my money. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I'd seen behind the curtain. I knew the man she was marrying wasn't who he claimed to be. And if she wanted to gamble with my life savings, she was about to find out what happens when the quiet sister stops being quiet. By the time I reached her apartment, I was running on fumes. No food, no sleep, just pure, vibrating disbelief. I barely remembered the drive. Charleston's early morning haze had blurred into a tunnel of red lights and static, and when I pulled up to her building, I sat behind the wheel for a full minute, just breathing. Then I marched through the glass doors like a woman with a purpose. The doorman, familiar from past visits, smiled and waved me up without question. He had no idea he'd just let us storm into the building. Her place was on the top floor, of course. Brielle always had to be elevated above it all, even if she couldn't afford the view. When she opened the door, she looked surprised. Not guilty, just annoyed, like I'd interrupted her manicure. "It's early," she said flatly, blocking the entrance with her body. What's going on? I didn't answer. I pushed past her. Inside, it looked like a bridal magazine had exploded. Swatches of white tulle and ivory satin draped across the couch. Empty espresso cups on the marble counter. A wall of sticky notes color-coded by vendor. And at the center of it all, a silver MacBook displaying a massive spreadsheet labeled Wedding Budget Final. I turned to her slowly. Where's my money, Brielle? She closed the door behind me with an exaggerated sigh. Okay, so, I was going to tell you. Tell me what? That you stole $45,000 from my account. My voice cracked on the number. Saying it aloud made it real, too real. She flopped onto the couch, dramatically, like this was just another one of our teenage spats over closet space. Oh my God, don't be so melodramatic. I borrowed it. I stared at her. Borrowing requires permission. She rolled her eyes. Would you have said yes? No, exactly. She smiled like she'd made a point that should end the conversation. I didn't move. That was my down payment, Brielle. My future. You took it without even asking. We needed the deposit for the Fairmont, she said, picking at her cuticle. You know how quickly they book up. Nathan's firm is asset-rich, not liquid. He couldn't front the cash immediately. So you stole it from me. Her tone sharpened. It was an emergency. You're not poor, Leah. You make good money. You can save it back. Eventually. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It took me 7 years. She stood abruptly. Why are you being so selfish? This is the most important day of my life. My hands curled into fists. You spent it on a Vera Wang dress. Michelin-starred catering. Exotic orchids. That's not an emergency. That's delusion. She laughed, a cold, clipped sound I'd never heard from her before. You're jealous. I blinked. Excuse me. You can't stand that I'm finally happy. That I found someone successful. Someone who loves me. Someone who wants to give me the life you'll never have. The words hit like open-handed slaps, each one heavier than the last. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Something inside me shifted in that moment. Not rage, not sadness. Something clearer. I walked to the counter and picked up my phone. I'm calling Nathan. She flew across the room and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was stronger than I expected. Don't you dare. I didn't pull away. He deserves to know where his wedding money came from. He already knows, she lied. No, he doesn't. Not if he thinks he's paying for it. Which, by the way, I don't believe. She stepped back, calculating. Then, quieter, more venomous. You wouldn't really do that. You don't have it in you. You sure about that? There was a pause. Then she smirked. You've never stood up to anyone in your life, Leah. Why start now? I walked to the door without another word. She called after me, sing-song and smug. Good luck getting Mommy and Daddy to take your side. But I wasn't going to my parents. I wasn't even going to cry, because Brielle just drew a line in the sand, and for once in my life, I was going to step over it. 3 months before the money disappeared, before the wedding invitations were printed and the designer gown ordered, I was at a digital marketing conference in Atlanta. It had been a whirlwind trip. 3 days of keynote panels, breakout sessions, and awkward hotel breakfasts. I was staying at the St. Regis, courtesy of my firm, and on my final night, I went down to the bar alone, needing something cold and sharp to take the edge off all the smiling. I saw him before I heard him. Damien, sitting in a quiet corner booth. Dimly lit, his back partially turned, but that jawline, that posture, that smug way of holding a glass, I recognized it instantly. But he wasn't alone. The woman beside him was beautiful, younger than Brielle, darker hair, legs crossed confidently beneath the table. They weren't talking like colleagues. His hand was on her thigh. Her hand toyed with the lapel of his suit. He leaned close to her ear and said something that made her laugh, the kind of laugh that wasn't polite, it was intimate. Familiar. I froze mid-step, my wine glass halfway to my lips. Then I heard her say it. What about your fiancé? Damien didn't flinch. Brielle's great for optics, he said, chuckling. But I'm not locking anything down yet. She fits the image. The ring, the house, the photos. But I'm still shopping. He kissed the woman then. Not a cheek kiss. Not a drunk mistake. A deliberate, lingering, practiced kiss. I should have walked away. I should have taken a picture. I should have said something. But instead, I just stood there, pulse roaring in my ears. That's when he saw me. His expression shifted in an instant. Recognition first, then calculation. He excused himself from the woman and walked straight over, sliding into the empty seat across from me like we were old friends. Leah Whitman, he said smoothly. What a surprise. I stared at him. Did Brielle know you were here? She mentioned you'd be at a conference. Small world, huh? He nodded back toward the woman. Kristen, business associate. We're discussing a property in Midtown. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. After a beat, he reached into his inner coat pocket and pulled out a checkbook. I blinked, confused. He scribbled something quickly, tore the slip free, and slid it across the table. $5,000. Pay to the order of Leah Whitman. For your discretion, he said, smiling like this was just part of doing business. No need to upset Brielle. She'd spiral. I didn't touch the check. You're trying to bribe me. I'm trying to avoid unnecessary pain. By lying. By containing the fallout. There was a silence between us. I pushed the check back toward him. I'm not for sale. His smile dropped for the first time. Everyone has a price, Leah. I just haven't found yours yet. He stood then, adjusted his jacket, and walked back to Kristen like nothing had happened. I didn't tell Brielle. I told myself it was because I needed proof, that it would be her word against mine, that she was too deep into the fantasy to hear the truth. But really, I was afraid of how she'd turn it around, of how my parents would accuse me of ruining her happiness, of how I'd be the bitter sister again, until she stole my money, until she crossed a line that couldn't be rationalized or swept under a family rug. That's when I called Talia. She opened the door still in her pajamas, wrapped me in a hug before I could even say a word, and sat me on her couch with a cup of tea I never touched. You need to tell her, she said flatly after I recounted everything. About Atlanta, about Damien, about all of it. I shook my head. It feels like revenge, not protection. Talia raised an eyebrow. Why can't it be both? She won't believe me. Then tell Damien. He'll believe you. That's blackmail. No, that's leverage. She stole from you. He cheated on her. You're just making sure everybody gets the consequences they earned. I looked down into the untouched tea in my lap, and for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt steady. I'm going to call him tomorrow. Talia nodded. And make sure he sees the whole picture, especially the parts he tried to bury. I sat in my car in the underground parking garage of Damien's office building, fingers drumming nervously on the steering wheel. I had barely slept. The image of that check, the contempt in his voice, Brielle's smirk when she told me I'd never stand up to her. It all churned inside me like a second heartbeat. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about taking back control. For once in my life, I wasn't going to wait for someone else to fix it. I called the front desk. Mr. Langford's office. The assistant answered, crisp and detached. This is Leah Whitman, Brielle's sister. I need to speak with him. It's urgent. There was a pause. Then, one moment, please. Another pause, shorter this time. Come to the 18th floor. He's expecting you. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Damien in a corner office that reeked of success, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Charleston Harbor, architectural models on glass shelves, degrees and awards framed in dark wood. He wore a fitted navy suit and a thin, practiced smile. His eyes flicked over me like he was assessing damage before a negotiation. What's this about Leah? He asked, folding his hands. I didn't bother easing into it. Brielle stole $45,000 from me to fund your wedding. The smile dropped. For a moment, his expression didn't shift. He simply stared like he was waiting for the punchline. Then, what are you talking about? She transferred it from my account. I have the banking records. She said it was because your firm is cash poor and couldn't front the Fairmont deposit. He blinked. That's not true. I paid for the Fairmont 2 months ago. In full. The budget we agreed on was $50,000. Brielle told me it was $99,000. He shook his head, leaned back. I never approved that. And I didn't ask her or anyone for money. I watched his face carefully. He looked genuinely blindsided. And I hated how much that complicated things. I didn't come here just to tell you that, I said quietly. I came to remind you of something else. He stiffened. I saw the exact second he realized where this was going. Atlanta, I said. St. Regis. Kristen. His jaw clenched. He looked away for a moment, then stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. I wondered when you'd use that. I wasn't planning to. I didn't want to hurt her. I wanted to believe maybe you'd changed your mind. But then she stole from me, lied to my face, and said you knew. He turned back to me, slowly. Are you blackmailing me? I'm asking for my money back. And if I refuse? I met his eyes. Then I tell Brielle everything. Every lie, every touch, every detail. He stared at me for a long beat. Then, to my surprise, he nodded. You'll have the full amount today. I exhaled, the tension sliding from my shoulders like a coat. But before I could speak, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. You should see this, he said, sliding it across the desk. Inside, credit card statements, online gambling transactions, emails from debt collectors, pawn shop receipts, things Brielle had sold from his apartment. Thousands of dollars in losses. 3 maxed out cards. She's got a problem, Leah. A real one. I discovered all this last week. I was going to confront her after a deal closed. But now I looked up at him. So she's been hiding everything. He nodded. The shopping addiction, the gambling, it's worse than I thought. It doesn't excuse what you did in Atlanta. No, he said, voice low. It doesn't. That was a mistake I've regretted every day since. Kristen, that wasn't the only time. I wasn't ready for commitment. I let it go too far. So why propose? He sighed. Because Brielle pushed for it. Because I thought it looked good. Because I convinced myself I'd grow into the idea. We sat in silence. Then he opened his phone, tapped quickly, and showed me the transfer confirmation. It's done. Full amount returned. I stood. You and I are done here too. He nodded. But what about Brielle? She needs help. He looked genuinely weary now. She needs a reality check first. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. Brielle. You told him, she hissed when I picked up. How could you? He already knew, I said calmly. You should have come clean. There was silence on the line. Then, come to my apartment, please. I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure if I was walking into a confession or the collapse of everything we'd ever pretended to be as sisters. The house looked exactly the same, my mother's prized garden blooming along the walkway, the brass porch light flickering gently in the twilight, the faint smell of pot, roast leaking through the screen door. I hadn't even knocked when she opened it, arms outstretched in that familiar, overly perfumed embrace. There's my girl. Come in, come in. Your sister's already here. Of course she was. The dining room was set with the good china. That alone told me everything I needed to know. My mother only used it when she was pretending everything was fine. When the cracks beneath the tablecloth had started to show and she needed porcelain and polished silver to hold the family together. Brielle was seated beside my father, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun, makeup flawless except for the slight puffiness under her eyes. She lifted her wine glass in my direction without smiling. Dinner began like every other. Weather updates, my father's golf game, my mother's new favorite book club author. I pushed the pot, roast around on my plate, waiting. The performance was so rehearsed it made my skin crawl. I watched Brielle swirl her wine, and I remembered the look on her face when I confronted her. I remembered Damien's folder of evidence, and I remembered what silence had cost me. The moment arrived with dessert. So, my mother said brightly, slicing the pie with artificial cheer, Brielle tells us you two had a little disagreement about the wedding. Something about a misunderstanding with the money. I nearly choked on my water. A misunderstanding? I repeated, is that what we're calling theft now? My father's fork clattered against his plate. Brielle flinched. Leah, he said slowly, warningly, let's not turn this into… She stole $45,000 from my account, I said, my voice cutting cleanly across the table. That's not a misunderstanding. That's felony-level theft. Leah, please, my mother murmured, reaching for my hand. We know you're upset, but Brielle explained. She thought you were helping with the wedding. I laughed. It came out sharp, bitter. Helping? By draining my entire savings? She told you that. My father's jaw tightened. She said it was temporary, that you offered. She lied, I said flatly, and pulled the printed bank statement from my purse, sliding it across the table like an indictment. Here, in case you need proof that your daughter didn't just make a mistake, she committed fraud. Brielle stared down at the page. Her knuckles turned white around her wine glass. My mother didn't even look. She just kept slicing pie. Your sister's under a lot of pressure, she said softly. We can't judge her too harshly. You mean we never have, I snapped. We've spent our entire lives pretending her problems are everyone else's responsibility. That's not true, my father said. It is, I said. When I got A's, you asked why I didn't tutor her. When she flunked, you blamed the teacher. When I needed a car, I saved for 2 years. When she wanted one, you bought it. Brielle's voice cracked. I was desperate. So you stole from me? I turned to her. Why not ask for help? I thought I could win it back, she whispered. The debt was piling up, and Nathan. I didn't want him to know. He does now, I said. Her face drained. You told him. I didn't have to. He found the receipts, the gambling sites, the pawned watches. He showed me everything. Leah, my mother said sharply. Enough. No, I said. Not this time. I've been quiet for 30 years while you made excuses for her. I've cleaned up every mess, smiled through every lie, sacrificed so she could have whatever she wanted. But this time she took my future. We've discussed it, my father said, suddenly formal. We're prepared to loan you the money until she can repay you. No, I said. I don't want your money. I want accountability. She's your sister, my mother said, tears in her voice. Yes, I said. She is. And that used to mean something. But now, it means I was an easy mark. Brielle slammed her glass down. I said, I'm sorry. No, I said, standing. You're sorry you got caught. That's not the same thing. I looked at my parents one last time, hoping, stupidly, that maybe this time they'd stand beside me. My mother shook her head. We thought we raised you to be more forgiving. I walked to the door, my voice calm. You raised me to be responsible. You raised her to believe she never had to be. And this time, I didn't look back when I left. 6 months later, I stood in the entryway of my new office, small, sunlit, and entirely mine. The door still smelled like fresh paint. A modest sign by the window read Whitman Communications. The business cards on my desk bore my name in silver foil, Leah Whitman, founder. I ran my fingers over the lettering, still in disbelief that something I built, something no one could take, had finally come to life. I hadn't taken a cent from my parents, not for the business, not for the condo in Mount Pleasant I'd put the down payment on just weeks after Damien wired the money back. I'd used what I saved, what I reclaimed, what I earned. Brielle, surprisingly, kept her promise. After the dinner that night, she called me. Once, twice, then went quiet. I ignored the messages at first, unsure whether I wanted distance or closure. Then, one evening, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. No makeup, no designer heels, just a girl in worn jeans and an oversized sweater, eyes red but steady. I need help, she'd said. No pretense, no spin, just that. And somehow, it was more shocking than the theft. She'd started therapy, joined Gamblers Anonymous, left the luxury apartment and moved into a one-bedroom near King Street that she could actually afford. Took a job as an admin assistant at a youth literacy nonprofit, which paid little but gave her something I'd never seen in her before, direction. At first, we only spoke during family therapy sessions. They were hard, brutal sometimes. My parents had to face truths they'd spent decades avoiding, about favoritism, enabling the quiet damage of always choosing one child over the other. My mother wept through most of them. My father spent weeks defensive before he finally said, "We thought we were protecting Brielle, but we were hurting both of you." Healing didn't happen all at once. Trust didn't return in grand declarations. It came in small, hesitant steps. A text without accusation, a coffee invitation with no agenda, a voicemail from Brielle that said, "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm proud of you." And now here we were, 6 months later, meeting for coffee on a gray Tuesday afternoon in a quiet cafe halfway between our offices. She was already seated when I arrived, hands wrapped around a ceramic mug, hair pulled into a loose bun that didn't try to be perfect. She looked real, human, not the curated version of herself she used to perform. "I ordered you a hazelnut latte," she said, nodding toward the cup waiting at my seat. "I remembered it was your favorite." I blinked. It shouldn't have meant so much, but it did. "Thanks," I said, sliding into the booth across from her. We talked for over an hour, about work, about books, about nothing important and everything that was. There was a lightness to it, not because everything was healed, but because we weren't pretending anymore. "I wanted to give you this," she said finally, pulling something from her coat pocket. A bronze chip on a small chain. 6 months. One day at a time, right? I took it gently. "You've done the work. I see it." She nodded. "I'll keep doing it. I know I haven't earned your full trust yet, but I will." "You're earning it," I said. "One conversation at a time." She smiled, and for the first time in years, it wasn't brittle or forced, just warm. As we walked out of the cafe, she reached for my hand. Tentatively, I let her take it, because that's the thing about revenge. Sometimes it doesn't look like fireworks or courtroom drama. Sometimes it looks like reclaiming your space, your voice, your future. Sometimes it looks like building something real after everything fake has collapsed. I wasn't the shadow anymore. I wasn't the fixer, the backup plan, the invisible sister. I was Leah, exactly as I was,